If you want to win a Super Bowl in the modern day NFL, you have to have a dominant defensive front. Whether if it was the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Seahawks, or the runner up this year in the New England Patriots, their dominance started on that defensive line. So today, with the draft around the corner, I want to give you my top 10 edge rushers, top 10 interior guys, as these are big boys that don't always get the love, but their dominance can help you win at the highest of levels. Let's start on the interior of the defensive line. Now, in order to not keep you guys here for an hour, what I'm going to do is give you guys my short list, honorable mentions, guys that aren't in my top 50, and I will just show you my rankings as they stand, but I will highlight the guys that did make the top 50 big board. For interior defensive linemen, we have guys like Caden McDonald, who was very close to making that top 50. Following DeMonte Capehart, a tremendous player there. We have to look past Clemson's down year, but he is a tremendous talent. Dominic Orange, one of the funnest names I've seen in recent years. Grayson Holton, there out of the Oklahoma Sooners. And Skylar Gill Howard. That is my short list of guys on the interior that didn't make the top 50. But let's get into the top 50 with Darrell Jackson Jr. I'm a Gators fan. It pains me to have a Seminole on any list, but that goes to show how talented this guy is. At 6'5", 340, rare size and athleticism for the position, but he wins almost every single rep with his strength. Anytime he wins, it's almost always with strength, and that leads to him being a good run defender, but strong enough to be disruptive in the passing game. I think he had a good Senior Bowl weekend. The only thing you worry about is his lack of moves and arsenal in the pass rushing department. But outside of that, I think he does have the versatility to play all three downs, and his run stopping ability, his rare strength and size can push him up draft boards to get drafted a lot higher than where he's currently projected. At number 5 is Christian Miller at 6'4", 310. It's a Georgia Bulldog, man. Another player I hate to give props to, but he is very, very good. He has great size to him with quick hands, good gap integrity, very smart there, playing in the SEC for a couple of years. So he's playing against NFL-ready bodies in big-time games, game in and game out. I do think he's good to great at everything, but what it makes him intriguing is his quick hands and his athleticism. That could push him up draft boards. Outside of getting washed occasionally there in the run game, I think that's more so of a stamina thing. Regardless, Christian Miller is very good, and that's why he is at number 5. Now, when we talk about the top 4, I do think there is a sizable gap. I do think there's a big of a tier difference with the top 4 and the rest of the group. So moving into the top 4, I could see all of these guys being first-round selections, and this one might be the biggest surprise of them all. But Dante Corleone out of the Cincinnati Bearcats at 6'1", 335. Man, he is a huge person. Elite mass to him. A lot of his weight is muscle, as you can see in the picture, but he just has a lot of power to him as well. I do think he's a deceptive athlete at 335 pounds, as we've seen by his testing. Strong run defender, solid pass rusher, a decent arsenal with his game as well. He is a bit short at 6'1", but honestly, I don't look too much into that when we talk about interior defensive linemen. Top 50 prospect on my board for a reason. Now, at number 3 is another guy with rare size, Lee Hunter at 6'4", 325. This is, I think, the community's favorite interior defensive lineman because he has great size. He's a dominant run defender. I think he has the athletic tools to be functional in the pass rushing department at the next level. But a great Senior Bowl weekend. I think he is a tone setter up front. He stood out on that dominant defensive line there at Texas Tech, which is very hard to do next to David Bailey and Skylar Gill Howard, and of course, Romello Height. Lee Hunter stood out at times, especially in that college football game. But outside of his lack of arsenal in the pass rushing department, Lee Hunter's special. Definitely, he's going to be a great early down guy. And hey, I have him as my top 3 defensive linemen in this year's class. Now, Caleb Banks, go Gators. Is this biased? Probably. At 6'6", 330, I don't think it's biased when you look at the measurables. If you want to draft strictly on upside, this is a guy that can sneak into the top 10 of this draft class. He has great size, elite power, good pass rushing tools to him. And he had a great start to the year when the Gators were playing for something. Though they weren't winning a lot of games, that was a lot on the shoulders of the head coach and the quarterback. But this defense has been dominant in recent years, and Caleb Banks has been doing his part of it, right? Solid run defender. Now, the second half of the year, he dealt with injuries. He disappeared when he was playing in those games. So I guess you want to worry about the consistency issues that you see even when this team is down in games. But as far as an athletic freak, as far as drafting a player strictly on the upside, Caleb Banks is up there as far as a player that could go again in the top 10 of this draft. I have him at number 2 because at number 1, though there are questions about this team's lack of success last year, though there are questions about this player's work ethic, when I see on tape, I see a very special player. I see a top 10 player on my overall big board, and that is Peter Woods. At 6'3", 310, of course, Clemson came into this past year with all the expectations in the world. Heck, I seem to think I know a little bit about college football. I had Clemson being a top 4 team in the nation. I don't even know what they have, 6 wins on the year. They failed in every single department as a program. But that's why a lot of their players are taking a lot of hits as far as their preseason expectations, like TJ Parker, Peter Woods, Cade Klubnik. These are all guys that are getting pushed farther down the boards than we would have projected them before the season. Regardless, when I look on tape of Peter Woods, I think he checks every box as an interior defensive lineman. Elite strength, athleticism, a great pass rusher. I think he's a dominant anchor in the run game. He's a foundational piece on the defensive front. And like I mentioned, he could be a top 5 player on my overall big board when this offseason is all said and done. There's no glaring issues for me outside of the fact that he came into the combine, didn't really test. He came in overweight as well. So I want to see exactly how his pro day goes. And I also want to see what kind of shape he's in heading into actual draft season. So I think determining on what these teams see in his work ethic and his interviewing, I think that's going to determine his draft range because I think he has a far bigger range than a lot of the defensive linemen in this year's class because the talent tells you he should be drafted in the top 10. But the other issues tell you he might even slip to the second round. So Peter Woods, for me, is a top 10 player on my big board. He's my number 1 interior defensive lineman. Let's recap really quick before we move to the edge rushers. You see the top 5 on your screen. Now, 6 through 10, is on your screen as well. But that's it for the interior defensive linemen. Love the big boys. But now let's move to the edge rushers. Moving over to the edge rushers, these are guys that can dominate the next level. They are arguably the most important position on the defensive side of the ball. You need to be able to get after the passers, disrupt other opposing offenses, and create turnovers for your team. So the edge rusher is one of the most important positions, and this is my short list of players. We have Kamara, there out of the Indiana Hoosiers. A bit undersized, but one of my favorite players to just turn on the tape and watch because his motor is relentless. We have R. Mason Thomas, who is, I think, underrated. I just think that overall, there's questions about his game that ultimately have him down here at number 14, but I think it's worth note that the short list is, of course, interchangeable. Malachi Lawrence out of UCF, Zion Young there out of Mizzou, and Tyreek Sapp, another guy I could be biased there out of Florida, but he might be the strongest defensive edge in the class, and he might be the strongest anchor in the class. So as far as a run defender, he could sneak up these boards and be drafted a lot higher than we would think. But let's go into the top 10. I want to follow the same logic here, where I'm going to highlight the players on my top 50 and just overview the players that are not. 6 through 10 goes as follows, where we have Keldrick Folk at number 6, maybe the best run defender in the class. Freakish frame there at like 6'6", 285 there for the Auburn Tigers. We have Danny Dennis Sutton, who is your prototypical Penn State edge rusher, who is a bit thinner, but he's an athletic freak and can get after the passer. I like what I see on tape. We have Derek Moore out of Michigan, followed by Cassius Howell and LT Overton. Those are all guys that, again, Cassius Howell is more of your pass rusher, had like a 92.6 PFF pass rushing grade this past year. He could go in the middle of the first round, but again, he is almost a 0 in the run game. But then you have like an LT Overton, who is strictly a run defender. So these are all guys that bring a defense's different elements, different strengths that coordinators can play with. But that is my short list, and of course, 6 through 10. Let's get into the players that are in my top 5, but are also on my top 50 big board. Akeem Mesidor at 6'3", 265. He's interesting. I will say this. The nickname is going around. He's called Leather Helmet. That's because he's like, what, a 6-year college football player. So just know if your team drafts Akeem Mesidor, he's ready to go by week number 1. He will be 25 years old at that point, so he's going to be an older rookie. But again, as far as an instant impact player, this is your guy. If you are the Buffalo Bills, if you're a team in that range at the end of the first round, the Chicago Bears, Akeem Mesidor could be a great fit to plug and play to produce from day number 1. But he's coming off of his best collegiate year. Only took him 6 years, right? But 12 sacks last season helped this Miami Hurricanes team get to the national title game. Him and Ruben Bain dominated and terrorized opposing quarterbacks. But as far as a skill set, I think he's complete, right? You better be as a 6-year player. I think he has a good to great anchor in the run game. Very smart in his approach and pursuit angles. Powerful pass rusher. But I want to propose this question to you guys, and I did this earlier in the offseason. A good debate came along with it. Let's be civil here. I want to ask you guys, it took Akeem Mesidor 6 years to have this dominant of a college football season. I know he's at his best. I know he's coming in as his best version going into the NFL. But how much of this best season came simply because he was running next to Ruben Bain, one of the most double-teamed and dominant edge rushers in this year's class, right? So I want to ask you guys, is this simply because he was facing single coverage a lot of the time? That is something that you have to think about for him translating to the next level, where if you throw him on the Buffalo Bills, he might be their number 1 edge rusher if Bradley Chubb gets hurt. So can he produce if he is being double-teamed? If he is the focal point of a defensive line? That questions paired with his age gives him a fair range, I would say, as far as where he could be drafted in this year's class. But he's at number 5. At number 4, TJ Parker. Originally was at number 3 earlier in the offseason. I bumped him down a spot at 6'3", 265. I think his strengths are glaringly obvious. He is so powerful in his pass rushing approach, and he can push everybody anywhere. He had such a great Senior Bowl weekend, pushing tackles into the backfield, almost not even breaking a sweat doing it. He is so strong. He is so productive, as over the last 2 years, he has combined 16 sacks and 6 forced fumbles. He's very good all around. And when you want to talk about a player that can have, just a ready to produce from day number 1, kind of a draft capital, TJ Parker is exactly that. But again, like I mentioned with Peter Woods, it was a down year for everybody. If you want to get the full best version on tape of a TJ Parker, just go back to 2024, check out his tape there. But as an overall package, I moved him down to number 4 because at number 3, man, I'll go to war for this dude. Gabe Akers at 6'3", 275. Let's start by saying that the coaching staff there at Illinois constantly produces quality NFL players. So I trust them in that regard. But this is a player that I think is so fun to watch. He's a my guy, and he is a complete edge. He had 20 sacks and 6 forced fumbles over the last 2 years. He's a great run defender, powerful pass rusher, constantly using his athleticism and arsenal of pass rush moves to get after the quarterback and generate turnovers for his defense. The only thing I will say that is a negative is sometimes he's a bit too, antsy. Sometimes he over pursues angles. But overall, I think that could be refined at the next level. I really like Gabe Akers, and he's at number 3. Don't be shocked if he gets drafted at the end of the first round. At least if I was a GM, that's probably where I would draft him, but that's probably why I would get fired. Number 2 is David Bailey, 6'3", 250, the best pass rusher in this year's class. He's coming off of a year with 14.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles as well, so he generates chaos and turnovers for his defense. He's also the most athletic edge rusher in this year's class. Outside of coming into this year's draft a little bit light and not being the greatest against the run, so maybe he's not a 3-down player, he's so dominant in the one aspect that you would draft him for that he can go as high as number 2 in this year's class to the New York Jets. So David Bailey, number 2. You guys have heard a lot about him. I'll keep that short, but man, he's fun to watch on tape. So if you want to watch any particular edge rusher and you've done no research, David Bailey, I would recommend because, man, he gets after the passer and creates a lot of plays. And number one is Ruben Bain. Perhaps the player with the most talking points this offseason of any player, any position, because simply he has shorter arms. Sub 33-inch arms at 6'3", 275. How much are you going to value arm size, arm length? That's what these GMs have to ask themselves. Because when you turn on the tape and you just look at the player, disregarding intangibles, he's dominant. He was one of the most double-teamed players last year. He wins with power almost every single time, but he's also athletic enough to get around you, right? He had 9.5 sacks, helped this team get to the national title game as an underdog in every single game in the college football playoff. Outside of having these shorter arms and maybe not being the greatest athlete, like a David Bailey, Ruben Bain, to me, I see dominance, and I think he should be the second pick in the NFL draft. Will he? I don't believe so. But as far as an edge rusher class goes, he's no doubt the best one in this year's class, if you were asking me. Let's recap here with the top 5. Now, these are players that we just ran through, so of course, pause it if you need to. Read through the names. Here is 6 through 10. As you have a chance to look through both of these slides, I do want to say to you guys, we're on the road to 150 subscribers. This is a new channel, so if you guys enjoy, let's try and get there before the NFL draft, man. It's a few weeks away. We're right there. It would be incredible to get there with your guys' support. You guys have been amazing on this new channel already. The only other thing I want to say is that tomorrow, cornerbacks and safeties will be coming out, and then soon after, we'll have linebackers, offensive line. Ultimately, every position will be hit. So, if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and again, leave your thoughts in the comments section below.